In this video I'm going to be taking off the bed from a year 2000 F350 Super Duty dually, or dual rear wheel truck. There's a couple unique things in this video from other videos I've seen. For example, this truck has a spray-in bed liner instead of a rigid plastic bed liner that can be removed, so I'll show you how to access the bolts underneath that. Fortunately, there is no real rust. This is a West Coast car, so I didn't have too much issue with having to over torque the bolts, except for on one scenario, in which case that led to I had to weld on something so I could remove it, and then unfortunately it ended up breaking the clip nut, so I ended up having to cut that off, but I'll show those methods. The steps covered will be removing the tailgate, including accessing the mechanisms inside the tailgate, removing the fifth wheel hitch rail, accessing the bed bolts under the spray-in bed liner, removing the fuel filler neck, the bed bolts themselves, and then finally how I lifted off the bed. Just taking off these Torx heads here so I can access the latch mechanism. I'm trying to pull on the handle when it opened the tailgate, so it was stuck. Once I get this open, I'll remove the cables on both sides that hold the gate up. There's Teddy. The gate has pins on each side that hold it in. On the right side, at about that angle, let's call it 30 degrees, the right side will release, and then I can pull the whole tailgate sideways and remove it. For this next part, I'm going to remove the fifth wheel hitch rail, and this is held on by 8 carriage bolts, and then on the below on the wheel well are nuts holding those 8 carriage bolts. Oh, and I should also note that from this point on, everything is that I'll show everything in the order that it should have been done, but not in the order that I did it. I did apply some heat here to help break loose these pretty dirty bolts, and after applying heat I put some lubricant as well. To get them off, I used a combination of the breaker bar, cheater bar, and then the ratchet with the cheater. And here you can see, because these are carriage bolts, they're able to move around, and so I just had to put something up there to keep it from moving. For removing the bed, there are 8 bed bolts, as I mentioned before. I think they were T35 Torx. I tried a couple ways to expose the heads, and the best way I found was using a chisel, because it's pretty straightforward. You just get the one side of it kind of angled in a certain way, and then you can cut it off. Ideally, which you'll see in the next one, you not only cut around the head, but actually down to the washer, because the whole washer comes up. The washer is kind of secured into the bolts, so the whole washer is going to come up with that. Seven of these came up pretty easily. Unfortunately, one did not. So what I did was weld a square bar, because that's what I had around, onto the head. Of course, actually welding a hex head of some sort onto this would have been much better. Then you can use a ratchet to get it off. I had to use this wrench. Unfortunately, that actually just broke this nut underneath. So I had to go about cutting out the head of the nut, and then I will later remove it and the clip nut after I pulled off the bed. Removing the fuel filler neck is pretty straightforward. There's 3 screws that hold in the neck itself into the bed. And there's also the gas cap lanyard, I suppose. Yeah, it can be removed from this side. There's just a grommet that needs to be pulled out, and then that whole thing can come out. And then underneath the bed there is a single hose clamp that needs to be unscrewed. That's attached to a bracket. Finally started the actual bed removal. Here I'm lifting up the back. which was helpful because there's two connectors there, of course, for the taillights. I ended up kind of going back and forth on how I was going to get this off. Ultimately, what I should have done was basically lift up the front side, I guess, to get it onto a 2x4, get the frame of the bed above the frame of the truck, and then I would have moved over to getting this back over here, the crane back on the back, and that way I could slowly move it off by a combination of, lifting the bed and then driving the truck forward. It's a little confusing what's going on in the video because I've done a bunch of different things here, but in a little bit you'll be able to see better. So here I got it on the 2x4 and this was the right choice. So now I'm able to move it back and get it to the point finally where it's on the bumper and I can lower it down to the ground, then move the crane over to the front, lift that front of the bed up and drive the truck away.